know it's ironic when we look at a mirror image of something, and it tells us a lot about society as well. Case in point, Justice League. Justice League is made up, and I love this picture, it's a beautiful picture, of these 6 members. 6, by the way, just to give some depth, is the number of a man in the Jewish system. But even more interesting is the fact that when we look at each of these characters in Justice League, even though we get a glimpse of the new ones and a little bit more of a glimpse of the older ones, they are all about the psychology of these characters. And I will do more on the psychology of them in another video. But right now, I just want to talk to you guys about the irony of things and how interesting it is looking at some of the critiques that we as people say about this film and how it's reflective of us. If you do recall, Superman in Batman v Superman was considered too dark a character. He's too moody. No, Superman is lighter. He's hopeful. This Superman is not hopeful, was the critique of Superman in BVS. Interestingly enough, the reverse critique is given now for Batman. Now, in Justice League, Batman is considered too light, too campy, too funny. At least there's too much humor on him. And interestingly enough, in Batman v Superman, Batman was considered what he should be, dark. The only thing was, it was said that he went over the limit and it was a little bit too exceptionally dark. But they thought it was the ideal Batman, the comic book Batman. This was the greatest Batman seen on live screen. Now, why this is interesting to me is because it is interesting that Zack Snyder had to be the one engineering this Batman we saw on the screen, as well as it was Zack Snyder that engineered this Superman on the screen. And again, Batman and Superman seem to always be highly misunderstood. And that is something that Zack Snyder seems to always attract for reasons unknown to me. But I'm sure in time we will understand. In this case, the BVS community defended this Superman, saying he's not emo. I remember I personally saying that, but he was taking on a lot in this world. Now, strangely enough, I have to defend this Batman, who people think is too campy, or he's the butt of jokes, or he's making too many jokes. Which I find strange, because this Batman, at no occasion, is trying to be funny. This Batman is dead serious about everything he says. He just happens to be rough and gruff. One thing that these both characters had in common was they were taking a lot of punishment. If you're a Batman fan and you're seeing Batman get beat up for most of the movie, you're likely to say that he's not being taken seriously, and he seems to be depowered, and he seems to be the butt of all jokes, and he seems to be moving cheesily. Why is he smiling? Why is he stammering? Because Zack Snyder always gives you a side of the character that you haven't seen before, but is in line with the character. Here, Superman was considered emo because he wasn't smiling enough. The opposite of what we're hearing with Batman. That he took everything too seriously. That he was too moody. That he's supposed to be a beacon of hope, but instead the world doesn't like him. And he seems unlikable. Too plain. Too woody. That's the absolute opposite of what we're hearing for Batman. In BVS, pay attention to this, Superman was taking a beating in that film as well, just like Batman was taking a beating in Justice League. Now, here are some other commonalities between Superman and Batman. Batman was willing to sacrifice his life so that Superman would bring a beacon of hope to the world. Before this is in stark opposition. Batman was trying to save the world from Superman by killing Superman. Just the polar opposite. But I have a video coming where I'll give more details on that. But I just wanted to show you guys something else. Now, while both characters were misunderstood by their world as well as the world of us viewing them. It's interesting to note also that these characters were being challenged by situations we had never seen Batman or Superman in real world situations. Batman, he had to be challenged by superpowered beings in the world he was in. And Superman was challenged by humanity. So, whereas Batman's greatest fear was dealing with a superpowered being that would take over the world, which was in this case Superman in BVS, Superman's greatest fear was in not having control over a situation and an outcome. That no matter how much he tried, situations seemed to be getting worse. And him being a beacon of hope, he was afraid that trying to be that beacon would only drive the world further into destruction. So it's interesting that these two guys' fears complement each other. Batman's fear was that the world would be changed because of some superpowered being, and Superman feared that he would not be that beacon of hope, but instead drive the world down a crazy, mad way to destruction. Both had credible fears. Both were afraid of losing their lives in the process. In the end, both were sacrificing. One gave his life, and the other was on the verge of giving his life. Was it not for Wonder Woman, he would have given his life for the cause that he believed in. And I thought that these parallels and these characters being in unique situations makes Zack Snyder once again, while controversial, a fantastic director that actually presses the boundaries on what we consider of our heroes and what we consider of humanity. Now, having said that, it's very interesting that when we look at Superman in Justice League, everybody loves him. He is the crowning act of Justice League, the movie. In fact, I'm so happy to talk about him because the next video that I'm going to do is going to talk in more detail about him. And Batman. Batman was the carrier of the torch until Superman took it over. And it's so fantastic to talk about Batman that my next video is going to definitely elaborate on it in a much more succinct way than this longer video. But just people's reactions to Batman, generally the strong BVS community that defended BVS, now critiquing and coming down hard on Batman, while the other casual viewers seem to like him and enjoy him. Whereas the BVS community defended Superman and saw the value in him, while the casual audience deemed him in a superficial way, we have now the BVS community, well, some of them, not all of them, I'm part of the BVS community, now castigating Batman as a joke, because basically that's what they're saying about him. He's a joke and a butt of jokes. Whereas not seeing the inherent value and his story arc. And so it takes a guy like myself again to show you guys the value in these characters. My next video is going to highlight this in more detail. So stay tuned for that video. You guys have a great one.